Happy Friday, everybody. You have found the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast once again, and we're about ready to take off here. So excited you've chosen to join us. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, we're getting close to that 1,000 followers. Hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell. You'll get the notifications when our podcast drops. We welcome you back here to the place where faith and fishing hook up. Now, we have all kinds of guests on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast. We interview all types of people in the industry of fishing. And there are two common denominators we look for. Number one, they know their stuff about fishing. And number two, they have faith in their life, the faith in the person of Jesus Christ. And this guy today has both. Let me tell you a little bit about who he works for. GSM Outdoors has been a major player in the hunting industry for years and years. Now they are a major player in the fishing industry. Two baits that they have acquired. They're life-changing baits. They're baits that, especially older guys, you can remember right when you fish these baits. Everybody knows when they fish the Bill Lewis rattle trap, what a life-changing bait, a defining bait. When that bait first came out, it was just like a magic lure. Number two, the Gary Yamamoto Senko. Everybody's in everyone's arsenal. They have a Senko. The Senko will never go out of style. It is one of the most effective baits in the history of bass fishing. Anyone can fish a Senko, and it makes everybody good. And today we're going to be talking to the Vice President of Fishing of GSM Outdoors, Crispin Powley, all the way from Tennessee. He's going to be here. I wore my Tennessee orange just for him. Coming up next on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up, GSM Outdoors Vice President of Fishing, Crispin Powley. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. Today I have as my guest, my buddy, Crispin Powley, all the way from Camden, Tennessee. Buddy, I wore my orange for you today. I got my Tennessee orange. Go Vols. How about it?
I love it. Go Vols, brother.
I tell you, I thought this was a good year to catch you. We're not going to say why and who I pull for, but it was a good year because I know I have a hard time talking to you Vols all the rest of the years. And so this is a good year to be able to do that. Man, you're over in Camden, Tennessee. Man, you got a great looking place back there. What's going on behind you over there? You're in like a Sports Central over there. Check that out.
It is. This is man, I've got a 9-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter that both, I mean, you can't see everything and it's probably good. It's about half a wreck, but my little girl's got her little gymnastics area set up over here and volleyball. And then back here, it's all turf. There's a pitching machine. Man, we play ball around here. It's hunting, fishing, church, and ball. That's what we do here.
Those are the seasons. And the way everything's broken out. What season is it? Baseball season, football season. You got it. That's awesome. That's a good deal. Well, man, you have become the Vice President of Fishing for GSM Outdoors, and GSM Outdoors is a monster. I can't even name everything that GSM Outdoors does. Tell us about GSM Outdoors and how this came about, man. Tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about GSM first and kind of tell you how I landed here. GSM is a conglomerate of brands that previously has just occupied the hunting shooting space. And outside, my career is fishing. I love to hunt. You and I have talked hunting a bunch in our past, and I knew a lot about GSM just because of the brands, Stealth Cam and Muddy. And I mean, they've just got, they own, well, I still say we own Hunter Specialties and Zinc Calls and Avian X and 50 hunt shoot brands. Wow. 50. Gigantic. Wow. So back in the fall of 21, I got a call from a guy at GSM that I knew. I had a couple of acquaintances over there, and he said, man, look, he said, we've been kind of positioning ourselves to get into the fishing side of things for quite a while. We were kind of waiting for kind of the right shoe to fall, so to speak. And he said, we bought our first brand. And he said, we bought it, and we really, really want you to come over here and run the fishing side of our organization. He said, we bought a foundational brand in the industry. GSM has this strong belief that we can offer our customer base almost everything under one roof. I can get almost all of my hunting needs met by GSM brands, and we're working towards that on the fishing side. Very, very aggressive in acquisition. And so, man, a lot of prayer, a lot of leaned on some business mentors of mine. Yeah. I'd been with Strike King at the time for 17 years.
Right.
And kind of grew up there, if I were being honest. It's and I feel like it's my child to this day. I still pay attention to every ad and every post. And so honestly, Chris, super, super tough decision to make. Super hard to leave, but man, I really felt like God was urging me to step into some uncomfortable territory. And I feel very strongly today that I listened to him and I made the right decision. I've been there for a little over a year now. And on the fishing side, now we own their first purchase was Yamamoto. That was the brand that they spoke of. Since then, we bought Bill Lewis, the maker of the legendary rattle trap. We bought Buckeye, a South Carolina company.
Oh, yeah.
And then we bought a company called Steel Shad that I've always just kind of had an affinity for. Great product. Just, I feel like it's got a ton of runway in front of it. So right now we're 4 brands strong. We've assembled a team of people that I could not be any prouder to call my friends and family. One of the things I told my CEO before I took this job, I would be willing to do this on 100% only if you allow me to come in and build a team that I want to build, the way I want to build it. And I'll be honest with you, this is taking a lesson out of the Strike King book. Back in the day, and no slight to the folks over there now. I love those people. Those people I talk to weekly.
Right. Good people.
People, I tell them I love them every time I get off the phone and meet it. And I miss a bunch of them every day. But the old days at Strike King, it was a smaller company, very, very team family atmosphere. We all had each other's back.
Right.
Everybody wore a bunch of hats, and that's kind of the model I've used over at GSM. First hire I made was a guy named Wes Higgins, who his grandfather was Bill Lewis. He ran Bill Lewis for a long time. Sat down and had a lot of conversations with Wes, and I just knew he was the right guy. And then I hired a young man named Jack Dice back in May of 22. Jack graduated from Liberty University on May the 7th and started working with me on May the 9th. And instead of crossing the graduation line, he won a check in a BFL that day and wore his graduation.
Go Flames. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Jack's just a stud. He's got a lot of influencer social media background. He's a young kid with a real bright marketing mind and an incredible fisherman. And then Wes knows a ton about the industry and the business, and we've got some folks in marketing, and it's just, man, it's kind of been a breath of fresh air, Chris. It really
that is awesome. When I introduced you, when I did my intro for you, I talked about the Bill Lewis rattle trap and the Gary Yamamoto Cinco have to be in every fisherman that exists arsenal. I mean, those are the two. I can remember when I first threw my first rattle trap, and I can remember the first time I ever threw a Cinco. I can remember no other bait the first time I threw them, but I remember when the rattle trap came out, and I remember when the Cinco came out, and I'm going to be fishing next week over to South Carolina Lake, and I will have a rattle trap and always a Cinco tied on. I mean, everything. I mean, those are the two most iconic baits probably of all time.
They really are. It's pretty cool to say that in your portfolio, you have two of the most iconic, influential baits. I mean, everybody has a version of a lipless crankbait that, the rattle trap is the pillar there. Everybody has a version of a stick worm, and the Senko is the pillar there. Everybody calls their lipless bait just, out of default, they call them traps, and everybody calls the stick worm a Senko. And what's really cool, what's super cool, Chris, is everywhere I go, somebody comes up to me with I caught my personal best on a rattle trap, or man, I took my kid fishing, or, there's always a Senko or a rattle trap story. And what we're really trying to do is grow those brands around those products where they're not the only focus. Right. And, we've had Yamamoto long enough that we've had an opportunity to get through a product development cycle. We've been super aggressive coming to market with new products and some pretty fun, innovative stuff. We launched some awesome new baits at ICAST for Bill Lewis this year. Buckeye's the one, honestly, that I probably shouldn't say this. This is like saying I like this kid better than this kid.
Yeah, I got you.
Buckeye's the one that probably has the highest ceiling.
Dude, I didn't even know y'all had Buckeye. I didn't even know I would have mentioned them, because let me tell you, I'm from South Carolina, and everybody from South Carolina knows Buckeye everything. I mean, they've done things as innovative, just, with all of their stuff, all their products. I mean, on Lake Kiowee, where I fish the most, I mean, if you don't have Buckeye stuff, you're way behind. So
I mean, Jeremy, the guy we bought it from, we talked several times just kind of about the philosophy of the brand. And one of the things that just endeared me to that brand, it's an angler's brand. It's not, they've never gone out and just spent a pile on marketing. They've never really gone after that ridiculously premium price point market. They've just, in the past of the brand, the history of the brand, it's been quality products at a good price that work, designed by anglers for anglers. And man, you can work with that. Like take the business side out of it. Like, man, I love the bass fish. Right. And so I can get down with Buckeye. Like we've got some awesome stuff. We just announced last week, our new pro staff for the coming year. I would put as far as like star power, and I don't mean that just because they're popular. I mean that because they're studs. Buckeye, the pro staff that we put together there, I'd put against anybody, any brand in the nation, in the game.
Wow. And you fish literally, folks, if you don't know this, Crispin Powley has fished with everybody. You fish with Kevin Van Dam. You fish with Mark Zona. You fish with everybody who's anybody in the industry. I mean, you've been in the boat with these guys, man. There aren't very many people that can say that. I mean, do you know how many people in the world would love to just be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to call up Van Dam and ask him what he do here. I'm going to ask him this, or I'm going to call Zona or something like that. I mean, that's incredible.
Kevin obviously was Strike King, but he is a lifelong friend. I love the guy. I love his family. I still call him because he's got a brain that's not like everybody else's. And I mean that in a good way, but he, we know his brain's not like everybody else. We know.
No
doubt. But yeah, it's been awesome. It's, the journey from like, hey, I think I really like bass fishing to today, it has really been, it's been kind of a storybook deal if you're a bass fisherman for me. And I don't take that for granted either, Chris. The days in the boat with Denny Brower and Larry Nixon and Skeet Reese, and I mean, just man, the who's who of bass fishing. I've gotten to either know them really well and or fish with most of them, and it's really I don't desire to go fish professionally. I mean, if you told me tomorrow, I'll pay your entry fees on the pro tour, I'll pay your gas, I would tell you thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah.
However, all that experience with those guys has been like just adding chapters in this book that I use when developing product and the way that I look at fishing and techniques and baits, and it's been pretty awesome.
Man, that is awesome. Now, let me tell you, you're multi-talented. You play the drums at your church, and I've been to your church, and you got an awesome church. I mean, you got an awesome pastor. You got an awesome church. I mean, it's very, very, I've been watching you guys on Facebook. Y'all been baptizing people. People are coming to know Christ, but you're the drummer, man. You're like the drummer dude. I've seen you up there, getting down. How did the drum stuff start for you?
So my dad was a drummer, and my dad actually did a bunch of studio work and played drum tracks. Well, back then they just went in and recorded you. He was a really good musician, and he was a DJ. I mean, music was always just a big part of our life growing up, and I played drums as a kid. I mean, I played up until my early teens when it wasn't really cool anymore, and I got really into sports and really into the outdoors and girls and the things that teenage boys get preoccupied with. Right. And man, I had not. It's kind of a funny story. I came to Camden 100% because of my church. I'm not from here. My wife's not from here. And I'd been going to church at Missionary Grove for probably a year. And Matthew, my pastor, he said, I really feel like God's drawing me for us to change our worship style to more of a contemporary style of worship. And he goes, I've got a bass player, I've got a keyboard player, I've got vocalists, I got an acoustic guitar, electric guitar. He goes, man, I just don't have a drummer. And I just sat there and bit my lip and did everything I could. And finally, I was like, I can do it. I know I can do it. I hadn't picked up a pair of drumsticks in 20 years. And I've played pretty much weekly for about the last 9 years. And I am not a gifted drummer, Chris. I do. We joke every week that my timing really depends on how loud I play, and but man, I love it. It's actually one of my favorite things that I've experienced in my life after coming to know Jesus is experiencing worship and leading other people in worship, and I laugh all the time because people go, man, you just get into it up there. And I'm like, I don't even know you're there. Right, like I don't even know you're in the room with me. Yeah, and I tried to play guitar, but I play it a lot like the drums and just really beat on it real hard. And I'm not a very good guitar player.
I'm more like a drummer on the guitar as well. So
another funny side note, I'm the only person on our worship team on the stage that does not have a microphone. They will not let me sing. So
they're not ready for primetime singers. I got you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, tell us about your faith journey, man. I know that Jesus has made a 180 in your life and turned you around. And tell us a little bit about that process.
Man, I grew up in a home where we didn't, I mean, we might go to church on Easter. We might go to church on Christmas, maybe. And that's no knock on my parents. It's just where they were in their life at that time. I didn't read a Bible growing up. I didn't pray growing up. I believed in God, Chris, because I'm, I don't know how you can not believe in God, even if you're not a follower of Jesus, even if you're not a churchgoer. I personally think it takes way more faith to deny God exists than it does.
That's a great point. Wow, what a great point. Yeah.
I just can't look around and go, I'm the biggest thing in the universe. I can't do it, so, always believing in God. About 13 or 14 years old, I had some friends who urged me to go to church with them pretty regularly. And I ended up going a few times and I liked it, man. Everybody there was nice to you. Yeah. I grew up my early childhood pretty rough, and then moved in with my father and my stepmom, about 5th, 6th grade. And, about 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I went to church a little more with some friends of mine. And one night I had this pastor go, man, you need to call on Jesus as your Lord and Savior. You need to be saved. And I did the sit down and repeat after me thing. Right. And
yeah.
I believe the guy had absolutely 100% great intent? Yes, right. I do.
Yeah.
Did I understand anything that I was doing? No, I didn't.
Right.
And so I walked out of there, and for several years, Chris would tell you I was a Christian.
Right.
I prayed
a prayer. Yeah.
nothing changed in my life. Right. And you know, if I recite the Mexican national anthem, I'm not Mexican.
That's right. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
And somewhere, man, in my early 30s, life without Jesus just caught up to me. It just did, man. It's I've made this statement a few times. Being your own God's tough. It just is.
Yeah.
It is you're not meant to sit on that throne, and you're gonna fall off of it.
Right.
And I didn't realize it that way at the time, but you know, I guess the simplest way to put it is I lived life the way I thought I should without any guidance and direction from the person who created me to live it. And I ended up going down some bad paths. I made a bunch of bad decisions, bunch of decisions that to this day I greatly regret. Now, after some time, I've come to grips that I've been forgiven for them, and I've done my best to make amends for them. But the nickel version, May of 2011, I was driving down the road. I was living in East Texas. I had moved away from my problems in West Tennessee, and I was living with a woman that I wasn't married to. We had a child together. Just kind of going through the motions of life, man, and I was still reeling from a lot of the decisions I'd made and the aftermath thereof. And Chris, one day I was driving down the road, and man, all I could think about was, I've ruined my life. I've ruined a bunch of people's lives. I've got this baby that deserves better than me as a father. I've got this woman I'm living with that deserves better than me. And I can't really explain it. And to this day, I wish I could better, but I pulled over on the side of the road on my way to the Dallas airport. I was flying to California for a work trip, and I got on my knees in a ditch on the side of the road. Said, God, I believe you're real. God, I know I don't know you. And God, I believe that you've got greater plans for me than this. And I'm going to submit my life to you this day. Please forgive me. You know, I didn't have somebody holding my hand. I wasn't in a church house. I begged God to save me. I begged God. And I'll be honest with you, Chris, I knew who Jesus was, but I didn't know him. I didn't fully understand who he was, but I had zero doubt that in that moment, God knew my heart, knew what I needed, knew what I was asking for. And I'm not going to tell you, I got up off my knees and the sun was shining and the birds were chirping. But I will tell you that in the coming days, things just started changing. And I would tell you that I believe God started doing a work in me, in my heart, in my mind, that manifested in me seeking to know Jesus and seeking to know who he was and what he did for me and why he did it and what his plan for me was. And that just kind of became the theme for everything around me. You know, I came back home from that work trip, and I sat Jessica down and I said, look, I said, this is going to be one of the strangest things I've ever said to you, but I'm a follower of Jesus now, and he's my Lord, he's my Savior, and I'm going to follow him, and I'm going to do everything the way he wants me to the best of my ability. I mean, man, I slept on the couch. I didn't even sleep. I was just light speed, dude. I was, and I started reading my Bible. And so here's the cool part of the story. I called 3 people. There are 3 people in my life that I believe, Chris, that were exactly what they claimed to be. And I had a lot of friends that claimed to be Christians my whole life, but they would be right beside me at the bar on Saturday nights. And I'm not saying you can't be a Christian, be at the bar, but I needed somebody to help me walk out what I was learning and reading in the Bible. And I called James Niggemeyer because I believe James Niggemeyer then and today is absolutely who he says he is.
Yeah, no doubt.
And if he wasn't, Sandy would make him be. And
that's true.
I called a guy named John Paul Moody. Do you know John Paul?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What a man of God.
John Paul was probably the greatest Christian influence in my life
Yeah.
up to that point. I had grown up around him.
Yeah.
I had seen the way he lived, and man, like there was no bad word that could be brought against John Paul from me.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. If you don't like, I tell people, if you don't like James Niggemeyer and you don't like John Paul Moody, I just don't know if I want to know you. I really don't.
I mean, seriously, we can save each other a bunch of time and trouble, and we're probably not going to see eye to eye, right?
That's exactly right.
And the third person I called was this guy that I met in a duck blind one time. Duck hunting was my god once upon a time, and he was a preacher, and he invited me to church, and he asked me one day in a boat ramp parking lot if he could pray for me, and I thought that was super weird because nobody had ever done that before.
Yeah.
And his name's Matthew Greer, and that's my pastor.
That's your pastor now.
And I'm going to tell you, man, like, Chris, I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but probably at a minimum of 2 hours a day, sometimes up to 4, every single day for probably 2 months, he would FaceTime me and we would just devour the word together.
Yeah.
I've discipled some people in the last 10 years. I've seen people really disciple other people. Nobody's ever put more effort into bringing somebody along than Matt did with me.
Wow.
And
yeah,
I would work and I would read my Bible and I would make just pages of notes. And then in the evening we'd get on FaceTime and I'd go, okay, I'm in Ezekiel today. And here's all the questions I've got. And he'd go, let's go. And we just dig in it together. And as that progressed, God opened some doors, and I knew undoubtedly that he wanted me to bring my family to Camden. That was in September of 11. So I got saved in May. We moved here in September. My wife and I got married in October. We ended up having another baby, Fisher. And in my time here, Chris, I've seen my wife, who claimed to be a Christian like me, get saved and be baptized. I've baptized both of my children. I've baptized my uncle, my little brother. I've seen my other little brother be baptized. God has completely taken this mess I made. And dude, if I could write out my life story, I would write it to be what it is today. And wow. And he did that. And man, I've seen this community be changed. My first Sunday at Missionary Grove, I loaded up my family in a U-Haul and drove 10 hours to Camden, Tennessee. My pastor leased a house I'd never laid eyes on. He had a group of men from the church there to unload all my belongings when I got there. I went to church. I moved to Camden on a Saturday. I went to church for the first time at Missionary Grove on Sunday. There was 34 people there. And we run about 500 now. Wow. And we've had to build a building. We've had to buy more vans. We baptize on average about 100 people a year. Wow. I know there's a lot of wonderful churches around, but man, I can't brag on mine enough. Yeah. We don't have it all right. Yeah. Man, when I read about people coming together and selling their belongings, and we do that once a year. We have a thing where everybody, literally has an auction, and all that money goes to help other people. And it's just, man, it's been the greatest era of my life. The last 10 years, I couldn't ask for it to be any better. What a story of where you were to where God brought you now. Amazing. I want to say something about Matthew. Matthew's one of those guys that when you meet him, there are some guys that are just anointed. You can just tell they're just anointed. And people that don't know what that term means or what it means, there is a feeling, there is a power that you get around certain people, and they're just, you just know that guy. And when he speaks, you can tell it's just wisdom.
It's the right time. His tone, his humility, and then he's an amazing preacher. And God definitely. There's so many people that I've talked to throughout the industry, and they're like, man, Crispin Powley, he's not the same person as he was before. He's not even the same person. He's not even the same guy anymore. And so, and here's the thing, in our industry, there are people that do interviews, and there are people that do podcasts, and there are people that, all around the media guys and all the things. And you hear, certain people, people will say this about Clay Dyer, this about, oh, you're a man of faith. You believe in your faith. You're motivational and with faith. But you can kind of tell that the meaning of that faith doesn't hit them. They don't understand. It's not just positive thinking. It's not just, hey, I'm going to be positive. Jesus stepped out of heaven into your life. Yeah. So when you talk about, I went from knowing about him, because everybody knows about, in America, most everybody has heard about Jesus. Now, not everybody, but most people have heard about Jesus with God. But just knowing about him, doesn't mean that you know him. And you came from knowing about him to knowing him, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, and honestly, in my time as a follower of Jesus, Chris, one of my biggest burdens and one of my biggest fears is that people will go through life and just call it sufficient knowing about him.
Right. Yeah.
And mistake that for knowing him.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to speak at a bunch of stuff. I mean, not like you, but I've spoken at 50 churches and men's retreats and Fishers of Men events, and I was trying to figure out how to make this point one time. And I was like, how can I make people just really understand knowing about somebody and knowing them is not the same.
Right.
And I was at Florence, Alabama at a Fisher and Men Regional, and I was driving down there and I was praying, God, just give me a clear way to explain to people, even in a room of guys fishing a Fishers of Men tournament, a faith-based organization.
Right.
I bet you there's people in there that don't know Jesus. And I bet you there's people in there that mistake knowing about him for knowing him. And I'm telling you, I didn't even plan on doing this. And I got up there and I start kind of giving my testimony and reading some scripture and kind of some application for that. And I said, I want to do something. I said, how many of y'all in here know who Kevin Van Dam is? And everybody, I know who Kevin Van Dam is. He's the greatest fisherman in the world, and I'm like, well, how many of you in here know where he lives? 90% of them, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Does anybody know his wife's name? And you'd be surprised. A lot of them know about Kevin. They knew Sherry and Jackson and Nicholas are his boys. And
know about cookies. They know about
all that, right? Like, who's his sponsor? And who's his brother? A lot of them know Randy, from DNR Sports Center. I said, how many of you can call him right now and he'll answer the phone? And that place just went dead.
Wow.
And I didn't tee this up, but I picked up my phone and I called him, and he answered, and I put it on speaker. We carried on a conversation. I told him I loved him and hung up. And I said, guys, that's the difference right there. He'll take my call. He'll answer my questions. And I thought, what a great picture of knowing about Jesus and knowing Jesus. And man, that is just my burden. I have so many people that I love that I worry about them growing up in the Bible Belt and claiming Christianity because of their proximity to it,
Man, that's dude. I'm fist pumping inside right now. I'm just going. that is awesome. That is awesome. Well, let me move you over here. Let's tell. We want to give. If we got guys that listen, and they listen because hopefully they can become better fishermen. Okay, you're a great fisherman, and so that's right. So give us some things you see that guys can do better. I know buying a Bill Lewis rattle trap and some Gary Yamo Senkos is a good start. What are some things you'd share with the average guy? Say, hey, this is some stuff you can do to get better.
I'm going to tell you, I've got a couple things that I do differently than a lot of people, maybe most people. And it's not popular with everybody, but if you want this is my tip. This is what I believe has helped me become a better fisherman and helped me catch more fish or helped me win more tournaments. If you know me, this will not be hard to believe at all, but this is so much the anti of what so many people are. And it boils down to find your style, right? I think that we read all these magazines and we watch all these tutorial videos and we listen to all these guys and you know, let's use Denny Brower. I'll pick on the old man for a minute. Denny's always told me, or Fritz. I love to pick on Fritz. Yeah. But you know, those two guys are legends. They've caught more bass than I'll ever catch. Yeah. And Denny's told me I love to throw a jig and I love to crank. It's my two favorite things on earth. Right. If you said you could do two things the rest of your life as far as bass fishing goes, it wouldn't be a topwater, which is awesome. Right. It wouldn't be, you know, throwing a Cinco, which you're going to catch them when you do that. Right. It would be casting or flipping a jig, and it'd be cranking a deep diving crankbait. And so Denny is the authority on one and Fritz is the authority on the other. No doubt. The thing is, Chris, both of them prescribe to the same theory that doesn't work for me. And it's because I'm wired different than they are. And it's like, you know, you've got a dual threat quarterback or you've got a pocket passer. They both get the job done. They do it their way. Yeah. My theory, I fish faster than everybody else. When I put my boat in the water that day and we go out there and blast off, my goal is to make more casts than you do.
I think that we would fish well together.
Okay. Well, I've had Van Dam tell me to slow down on numerous occasions. Wow. I mean, when I say I fish fast, dude, I mean, my and I'm gonna take it back to Strike King. One of my favorite baits on earth is a 10XD. Yeah. I grew up on Kentucky Lake. I grew up fishing offshore structure. Right. I believe I've got all the guys that fish with me laugh when I say this, but I say it multiple times throughout a tournament day. They'll eat it or they'll wear it. Yeah. That's their choice. They're going to do one or the other. It's coming at them so fast that they're either going to get it in their mouth or they're going to get it somewhere. They're going to eat it or wear it. And I crank a 10XD on a 9-3-1 reel absolutely as hard as you can all day. I eat Advil, ice my shoulders, and I'm dead serious. I mean, I've taken pro athletes out and them go, I can't do this.
I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah, but I fish a jig fast. I love to cast a football jig out there and drag it around, but where everybody else is just feeling them rocks, I'm scooting that sucker. And I here's what I'll tell you. If you were to take a cat, this is a dumb analogy, but I've used this in several seminars. If you were to take a cat and you drag a little toy in front of it, it'll creep along and it'll sit there and watch it. You move that sucker fast and he'll grab it almost every time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a bass's brain is about that big. Let's be honest. Yeah. I just want to trick them. I just want to catch the dumb one. And I will tell you that the faster you move a bait, the more casts you make, the more fish you put it in front of, the more fish you put it in front of, the more fish you stand to catch.
I love this.
Probably the dumbest tip you'll ever get.
I love this. I love this. I can't wait to take this segment and send this to my fishing partner and say, listen, listen to this. Listen,
man, one of the best fishermen I've ever fished with, Chris, we don't fish together anymore because we just contrast.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I had a little old man. I had a man, my dad never hunted, never fished a day in his life.
Right.
Not once. And I had some really cool men in my life that poured into me and would let me get in the boat with them and would take me hunting or whatever. Yeah. And I had this man named Ray Norwood, and Ray's in his 80s now. But he would take me with him, and we got to a point over the years where I'd jump up there and run a trolling motor. And I'd get up there, Chris, with that crankbait dude, and I'd just burn it up. He hadn't even made 2 casts, and I'd be pulling the trolling motor up.
My partner tells me the same thing all the time. I just got my line in the water and you're ready to go. I'm like, yeah, we got to go. We got to go. Yeah, man, that's awesome. I love that. I can't wait to cut this out and send him this part. That's what I'm going to do. Man, I tell you, we can talk all day. This is awesome. I'm telling you, I'm having the best time, but we got to wrap this up. Man, I want to thank you for being my guest today. That was amazing. That was amazing. Folks, let me tell you, Crispin Powley, GSM Outdoors. Awesome time. Awesome time. Hey, if you hadn't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit the little bell and you'll get the notifications. And as always, we thank you for joining us here on the Bass Chaplain Fishing Podcast, where faith and fishing hook up. We'll see you next time.